Hi, I'm Rahul Shah and I'm here to share with you how to create and deliver impactful speeches. Welcome back, guys. So I'm assuming you've got your pen, your paper, your cup of coffee, you're comfortably seated now and you're ready to dive straight in. Let's go straight to lesson number 1. Know your audience, right? Now, you cannot be a great speaker if you do not know who you're speaking to. A lot of speakers make the mistake of focusing on what they have to tell their audience. Now, it's not a bad idea to know the message that you want to get across, but I think it's also important to know who your audience is and what's important to them. I mean, look, let's put it this way. If a person asks you for directions on how to get from Singapore to Malaysia, and if you're going to give them directions on how to get from Singapore to Australia, that might be nice to know, but it's not exactly going to be very useful for them. So you got to know what do people want and what do people need. And your message has to be customized, has to be tailored to cater to the needs of your audience. So you have to know your audience. And most speakers tend to overlook that because it's a lot easier to just focus on what I want to tell you than to focus on what do you need to know so that I can tailor my message for you. Always start off by doing your homework. This is part of the preparation stage. You cannot become a good speaker without preparation. Find out about your audience. Who are they? Where do they come from? What languages do they speak and are they comfortable with? What are their preferences? What are their academic qualifications and literacy levels? What are the values, beliefs, philosophies, and ideals that guide them through their life? Are there certain vocabulary, lingo, jargons that they are more familiar with? Get to know your audience as much as you can, as well as you can. Now, how do you research your audience? Get onto Facebook, get onto LinkedIn, get onto your social media, get onto Google. Ask people who have spoken to similar audience profiles before. If all of that is still insufficient, turn up early on the day that you're supposed to speak to them. Get as much time as you can interacting and mingling with them before you start your speeches or your presentations. Now, this will be useful not only for catering and tailoring your message for them, it's also going to be useful for you in calming your nerves. Because when you're familiar with your audience, you have a sense of rapport established with your audience, a certain amount of friendliness has been established with your audience. When you start speaking to them later on, it no longer feels like you're speaking to strangers. It feels like you're speaking to people that you already know. It makes you feel more comfortable, it makes you feel more relaxed, and it makes delivering that speech a whole lot more easier. It just calms your jitters, settles the butterflies, and it makes you more natural and makes you appear to be more confident. So lesson number 1, know your audience. So lesson number 2 is craft one key message that can translate into one key idea. If you can craft one nice tagline that can act as a common thread to tie and weave your entire presentation together, then it will be able to carry a consistent message throughout your presentation, because a lot of times we risk going all over the place and we're not able to tie it all back together for the audience. And remember one thing, the audience is always lazy. The moment they have to put in any effort, the moment you make them work hard and make them feel like they have to tag along with you, they have to put in effort to be dragged along with you on that presentation or speech journey, they are going to fall out and drop off somewhere along the way. And it's going to be very difficult for you to hold their attention. So you need to make it easy. And part of making it easy is to tell them right at the start what your presentation is about in an interesting, in a simple manner by creating the one key tagline that encapsulates your key idea or your key message. So what are the guidelines of creating this one tagline? There are certain parameters that I usually use, and these are parameters that we use when we are crafting newspaper headlines or social media headlines. It's usually less than 11 words. It has got a clear subject. It might have a verb, but for speech writing, I strongly advise that you do. It's basically a summary of your entire presentation in those 11 words. Now, this might be just 11 words, but if used well, these 11 words can actually tell people a lot of crucial information to keep them hooked. Let's look at a simple newspaper headline might come across. Boy 11 dies in a car crash along the expressway. Now, boy 11 dies in car crash along the expressway. It's just 9 words, but in that 9 words, you know the gender, you know the age, you know the location, you know the outcome, and you know where it happened. So you know 5 important pieces of information within those 9 words alone. Now just imagine how powerful that is going to be if you can do that within your presentation. If you were to look at Steve Jobs' keynote address when he was launching the MacBook Air, he had a tagline that kept repeating throughout that keynote that said there's something in the air. And that was something that he played with throughout his keynote. So he kept coming back to that one thread that was weaving his whole presentation together. There's something in the air. So when your presentation has that one clear idea, that one clear message, you just want to keep repeating over and over again to ingrain into the minds of your audiences, it becomes a very powerful way of keeping your audience on check during the entire journey of your speech and presentation. So that brings me to lesson number 3. It's important for you to have a clear structure. Now, clarity is important for the audience to be able to understand how are you going to get them to the end point in your message. If the journey seems to be too troublesome, too grueling, if you're going to be all over the place, if there's no logical sequence and flow to what you're saying, and it's like throwing 10 balls at your audience at the same time, you're expecting them to do the hard work of catching them one by one and piecing them together, your audience is going to find it too cumbersome and too tiring to listen to you. At the end of the day, they're going to leave the room feeling more tired than they are going to be leaving feeling inspired or persuaded. And that's the last thing that you want. You do not want to zap the energy away from your audience. You want to make them feel charged up so that they're more inclined to take the actions that you want them to take by the end of your speech. Right? So if you want to make an impactful speech, it's important to be clear in your structure, in your approach, in your flow, so that it sounds logical and it's easy to follow through with you along your presentation journey. Now, there are many structures you can use out there. I personally have a list of 21 different structures that I can teach during my training programs. But for the purpose of this video, because all of you may come from different backgrounds and come from different use of speaking and presentations in your life, I'm going to teach you one powerful universal structure that could apply across the board. Now, this is something that a lot of elementary school students are learning, so rest assured, no matter where you are, this should be a simple enough structure for all of you to use. Although it's something that elementary students learn, it does not make it any less effective for you to be using even at management level in your organizations. It's easy, but it's foolproof. All right, so it's a very simple structure that's a PREP structure. P-R-E-P. Now, what does P-R-E-P stand for? It stands for point, reason, example or evidence, and point. So it's a very simple structure, and this is also something you can use when you are in a situation where you need to speak off the cuff. You're in an interview setting, or you are doing a media conversation, you are on a talk show, you are on a radio, or you are handling the Q&A segment of your presentation. So it's PREP, point, reason, example, point. You always start off by indicating what your key point is. Or, in this case, if you're delivering a speech or a presentation, what your key message is, what your key idea is. So you start off by laying out your point first. After you've laid out your point, you give a reason for that point. Why is this important? Why is this necessary? Why do we need to know this? Why does your audience have to hear this? What happens if they don't hear it? So give a reason for saying whatever you are saying. Give a reason for endorsing or making a point they're trying to make. So establish a reason. Once you have established the reason or the why, you go on to give examples or evidences to support that reason. Now, this is where the credibility or the substance part of the presentation and speeches come from. Because a lot of times your audience may be saying, says who? According to what source? What proof do you have? Remember, our audience today is getting a lot more intellectual. They're being a lot more informed. We are in an information age right now with Google at the fingertips of everybody. So you have a very well-read audience, and therefore you need to convince them sometimes in order to persuade them effectively. So give them good examples, give them good evidences, and this could be through sharings of your own anecdotes or experiences, or it could be quoting statistics or facts or figures or studies or research data. It could be any of those things, but give them good evidences and examples to support your reason for making the point that you're making. And at the end, the last P is go back to reiterating your point again. Summarize your point again, bring them back to what your end point is. PREP, point, reason, example, point. This is one structure that you can use to structure out your speeches and your presentations. You can use this in different combinations. You can have 1 point, 3 reasons, 3 sets of examples and evidences, 1 point again. It could be 3 different points, and you repeat this for each of the 3 different points, but remember to have a tagline that weaves it all in together again. So point number 3 is having a clear structure so the audience finds it easy to go through your presentations with you in a logical, in an effortless flow and journey. Lesson number 4 on how to craft and deliver impactful speeches. Make your content engaging. A lot of us are always stuck with information and content that is dry, dull, and boring. Nobody wants to listen to that. Nobody wants a presentation that's all technical data and information and systems and processes. Yes, that information is important. You may need to get it across to your audience, but there are many different ways how you can put that across to your audience. You have to add in a lot more components into your speeches and presentations to bring those speeches to life, to bring those presentations to life, so that the audience can get excited and enthusiastic about what you're saying. So there are many different tools that you can use to make your content engaging. You could use humor, for example. When you can make people laugh, you're dropping that wall of suspicion, skepticism, critic that your audience will be coming in with. You're making them a friendly audience, and therefore you come across as a friendly presenter and speaker. It helps to bridge the distance between you and your audience. So humor might be a tool that you can use. You could use references, quotes. When you quote people of prominence, popularity, authority, it gives more credibility to whatever you're saying. Remember, a lot of times about not what you're saying, but who is saying it. That makes a lot of difference. And sometimes we may not have the personal credibility to say it, but we can borrow credibility by quoting people who have that credibility already. So you can use quotes, you can use references, you could use pictures and props to help you to make it a lot more illustrative, to bring it to life, to make it a lot more visual for your audience. So there are different tools that you can use. We're not going to go in depth for a lot of them, but let us go in depth for one particular tool that I personally love a lot and I truly believe in. This tool is called storytelling. A speech and a presentation that is infused in stories serves as a Trojan horse to very subtly and gently get straight not only into the minds of your audiences, but into the hearts of your audiences. Through stories, you're able to connect with your audiences at a much deeper level beyond just the logical level. You're able to connect with them at an emotional level that makes your messages come across a lot more personal, a lot more impactful, and a lot more relatable. People find it easier to resonate with stories because they have been used and conditioned to receive stories from the time that they were in their cradles. Stories leave impressions on people's minds because stories evoke feelings and emotions that are harder to forget. Remember that quote by Maya Angelou that was something to the effect that people will never ever forget how you made them feel? Well, stories help you to do that. People will never be able to forget a good story that evokes a good feeling to them, that makes them feel nostalgic, that makes them feel excited, that makes them feel happy, that makes them feel hopeful. Good stories are always welcome. Remember, and people don't forget stories easily. Remember the first time when you heard Three Little Pigs? Or the Three Musketeers? Or when you first heard about Cinderella? You heard the stories years ago. But today, just the mere mention of the titles of the stories bring back the memories that you most fondly associate with the experiences behind those stories that you have had. So sharing great stories helps you to do that. From Martin Luther King to Obama to Lee Kuan Yew, a lot of them were fantastic storytellers. And through those stories, they've not only been able to persuade and influence people, but they have rewritten courses of history. And that's how powerful storytelling is. It's one of the most powerful tools that you can use in your arsenal. So how do you tell a good story? To tell a good story, you first understand how stories work. Stories are made up of what we call the story mix. A story requires a character. A story requires a plot, a setting, or a context. A story requires conflict. A story requires motion. Now let me go through each of these, but before that, let me tell you a story. Now this may take a bit of time, so I want you to sit back and relax, put that pen down, put the paper aside just for the moment, and just listen to this personal story of mine. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. I was walking home one day after a long day at work. I was walking towards my lift lobby. I was passing by this big open football field that is at the front of my block. Nothing unusual about it. It's a typical football field that you find in many estates around your neighborhood. But as I took a glance towards it accidentally, I noticed something really strange. At 2 a.m. in the morning, in the middle of the night, right smack in the middle of the football field, there was a lady in a long red dress, long hair, extremely pale looking, standing still and doing nothing but staring straight up at a full moon in the sky. And I wondered why. Why was there this lady in a long red dress, long hair, pale looking, standing absolutely still and staring straight up at a full moon in the sky at 2 a.m. in the morning? My curiosity got the better of me, and I stood there and I observed her for a couple of seconds. And as I observed her, I noticed that she took a step forward. As she took that step forward, I noticed she was wearing this pink color high heels. As she put her foot down, the heel snapped and she fell forward on her face. Ouch. Now, how many of you imagined or visualized a lady in a long red dress with long hair and very pale looking standing in the middle of a field? I'm sure you did. Most people do. Now I want you to reflect on the fact that neither did I ask you to visualize, nor did I ask you to imagine at any point before my story. I simply told you a story, but during the course of the story, you could not but help yourself get into the whole mode of visualizing and imagining whatever I was sharing with you. Now this boils down to a very simple fact on how the mind works. We do not receive and store information in a .txt format. We store all information that we receive in a .jpg or .gif format. We have this natural ability to take all information and immediately convert it into visuals. Now, why is that powerful? Because visuals evoke emotions. There's visuals that you see in your minds or you think about. They often trigger certain feelings, emotions that you associate with those emotions. And that is why storytelling becomes really powerful. They draw your audience in, they make them visualize whatever you're telling them, and therefore they start to see what you want them to see. And with that visualization, they not only see what you want them to see, they start to feel how you want them to feel. And that is a very critical step in getting them to then do what you need them to do. So if you want to influence or persuade someone to act how you want them to act, or take the kind of action you want them to take, then storytelling becomes a vital tool in your repository of tools in your speeches or in your presentations. So don't shy away from using stories. Use stories. Now, what worked in that story is the more details you give them, the more they're able to visualize your stories with precision. And the more they'll be able to immerse themselves in your entire storytelling process, converting themselves from just being a passive audience into an active audience where they are actively experiencing what you want them to experience. So you need a character. The lady in the red dress was my character. And I described the character for you so that you can picture her the way I saw her. Number two, there has to be a setting, a plot, or a context. In this case, the setting was 2 a.m. in the morning, open field, in front of a blog, in the pitch darkness where there's a full moon in the sky. That was my setting, right? So in your case, it could be a context, it could be a scenario, it could be a problem, it could be something else. But you got to frame up that context, you got to frame up that setting for the story to make sense. You got to give a background so that people can visualize your characters or your stories against a certain backdrop or against a certain scenario. There has to be a contrast. In my story, the whole contrast was the fact that it was in the middle of the night and there was somebody standing in the middle of the field doing nothing for no reason. And it probably evoked curiosity, it probably evoked fascination, it probably evokes a kind of interest. There has to be motion. You've got to keep people moving along the story. Now, if I tell you a story that says, once upon a time there's a bird, the bird was sitting on a branch. The bird continued to sit on a branch. 5 seconds later, the bird was still on a branch. That's not going to be a very exciting story, right? But if I tell you that once upon a time there was a bird sitting on a branch, it was feeling really hungry. It spotted a worm down below and it set its eyes against it. It bent its knees, it got into flight mode, it prepared itself, and when the moment was right, it spread its wing and it swooped down, took the worm and flew off. Now that was a better story than the first version. Not the best story, but it's a better story than the first version. It probably would have got you to follow along with it a lot better. So story has to have motion. Remember, motion creates emotion. Motion also creates momentum. People get excited when a story moves at a certain pace. So don't go too slow. While you want to share details, don't give that many details. Your story suddenly becomes this really, really slow motion movie. But you want it to be a fast, action-packed storyline. This is why we love Transformers or why we love Fast and Furious, because there's a lot that's happening in a short burst of time, and it keeps us going on, keeps us excited, keeps us engaged. So lesson number 4, use engaging content. So now we are coming to the final point on how to craft and deliver impactful speeches. It's called having a call for action. You can have a great speech, you can have a great presentation, you can build your journey, you can build your script, you can build the message, you can bring your audience from the start point to the destination point, and then a lot of times the speeches and the presentations just fizzle away. They simply evaporate into nothingness. They end abruptly. There is no closure. There is no idea on what we need to do next, or how the audience can take the next step forward, or what was the purpose of you making them sit through the entire 20, 30, 45 minutes. It all comes to nothing, and there could not be a bigger waste of your effort and the audience's time. And believe me, the audience can forgive you for a lot of things, but the audience will never forgive you for wasting their time. So having a very clear call for action at the end of your speeches and your presentations not only gives a nice closure to the speech, but it helps you to end the speech on a purposeful note. It makes the audience leave the room feeling empowered and not only enriched, which at the end of the day is what you want to do as a successful speaker and presenter. So have a clear call for action at the end of your speeches and presentation. What would you like the audience to do with everything that you have shared with them? It could be, I would like you to think about something. It would be, I would like you to reflect. Or it could be, I would love your approval. I would like to get your consensus. I would like you to take some action. Or I would like you to get involved in some way or another. Always have a clear, definitive call for action at the end of your speech. So ladies and gentlemen, that was the last point. With these 5 points, you should have enough to create a checklist for yourself the next time you are crafting and delivering a speech, to make sure that you not only deliver a good speech, but you're crafting and delivering an impactful speech. Should you have any questions that you want to ask further to what I've shared in this video, please put them down in the comment section below, and I'll personally come back to you with an answer to your questions and your queries. And with that, let me have a call for action for you. I strongly urge you to like this video and subscribe to the Ideas and Inspiration channel so that you can get more of these training videos coming up, a wealth of resources delivered to you absolutely free of cost. So ladies and gentlemen, do share this gift of knowledge and wisdom and resource with your friends and loved ones so that they too can benefit in their personal growth journeys. Now that you have liked and subscribed to this channel, let me give you one last tip, folks. Practice, practice, practice. The 3 P's that are going to make you go from being a good speaker to a great speaker. Remember, you cannot read or watch videos about swimming and become a better swimmer. You have to get into the pool. Similarly, you cannot read about being a better speaker or watch my videos on how to become a more impactful speaker and expect to become a more impactful speaker, but you're going to take everything that I've shared with you today, apply it, test it out, rework it again and again until it works for you so that you can become a more impactful speaker. Practice is the key to success, but remember, do not practice the things that don't work. practice the things that do work, and try to always re-engineer things that are not working for you. So all the best to you once again on your speaking journeys. Ladies and gentlemen, see you really soon.